Welcome to First Unitarian. I would invite you to join me in singing Gracias por el amor. We got some lyrics up here and some notes. We sang it last week with the choir, and I would invite you to join me. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and Gracias por el amor del cielo. Gracias por el inmenso amor. Gracias por el cantar del bosque. Hallelujah. Let's do this first verse a couple of times. Here we go. Gracias. Gracias por el amor del cielo. Gracias por el inmenso mar. Gracias por el cantar del bosque. Hallelujah. Let's go on to the second verse. Here we go. Gracias por el amor del mundo, gracias por la felicidad, gracias por toda mi familia, aleluya. Second verse, one more time. Gracias por el amor del mundo, gracias por la felicidad. Slow hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester. Here it is our mission that through spiritual connection in community, we listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. We gather here in this space, and for those who are online gathering locally, we gather on the contemporary and ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, more specifically the Seneca people, the keepers of the western door. And we gather here in community on Sunday mornings to anchor ourselves. Some of you are just entering and coming in here, and some of you have been here for a little while, connected with each other, starting at 10:30. So if you're after the service sitting here and being like, gosh, I love these people and I'd love to get to know this person and I'd love to do so over coffee, next week, come at 10:30. We gather in community between our two services. Here at First Unitarian, I'm the lead minister. I'm the Reverend Sherry Halliday Kwan. I use them and they and she and her pronouns. But the work that we do, it's not just on Sunday mornings. It's the work of many hands, many people, many hearts. All of us come together to build a community and a world that we love and that we are growing together. And so I invite you to take a deep breath with me. We're going to settle in together and light our chalice with our unison words. If you're joining online, I invite you to light a candle or a chalice. And here in the sanctuary, EJ or Reverend AJ, they match names-wise, so one of them is going to light the chalice. I'm going to let them choose. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and mysteries of this great gift. We join not only in breath and in word, but also in song. And so I invite you, if you are able, to rise in body to sing with us. And if you can't rise in body, I invite you to rise in spirit. And if you can't rise in spirit, we've got you. That's what church is. We hold each other together. Let us sing.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be Let's do that one more time. May I be filled. Here we go. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. Let's do may you be filled now. Here we go, and may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. We're going to do may we be filled now. Here we go. 1, 2. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. Let's do may we be whole. May we be whole.
Good morning. Hi. So I'm EJ. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And over the last couple years, very slowly and then seemingly very suddenly, I became a soccer mom. I got this shirt to reflect that. Actually, it was given to me because I am a soccer mom. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I am a taxi, right? I'm just driving, I'm going here and there, and all my life revolves around which soccer games. I did 3 last week, driving 2 hours away, driving here. But I do love it. Luckily, I love soccer. Thank God I'm not cringing. There are some sports I'm like, okay, I'll watch, but that's so great. But the soccer's great. So we decided, because we found out last year, that the Women's World Cup, the FIFA Women's World Cup, was in New Zealand, right? And we're like, okay, we're going to go. I'm a soccer mom. We're going. This is perfect timing. I blocked my schedule, and then I realized, you know what? I've actually not really taken a vacation in 20 years. I've taken vacations, but I've always had calls, especially Zoom. I've actually been using Zoom since 2014, and so I'm always available. I am the backup for everybody. I answer, texts and emails and stuff, even when I'm not there, right? I'm on vacation. I'm in the Adirondacks, and I always rent someplace that has Wi-Fi. That's probably not a great thing to do, but I didn't really realize this until planning for New Zealand. So fast forward now, I've got it all planned, and about a week before, I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this when I'm in New Zealand. It's like, I didn't even realize until like the week before, it's 16-hour time difference. So even if you do text me or whatever your emergency is, I got the service, so I could, I'm like, wait, this is not good. I can't be on that call. I can't do that, right? And my staff, my faculty, they came up to me. This is like 10 days a week before I'm leaving. They said, you need a break. You need to not answer our calls. We are not going to call you. You'll get emails because I'm CC'd on lots of things, right? Because it scares people if my name's on there too. So they CC me on it, but I don't have to respond to everything, right? And so a team of people actually came to me and said, we are going to help you. Because I run so many different things, you can't have one person cover for me. And they did. I did not answer an email. I did not take a call text. I said, you could text me if it was about like your family, dog pictures, that kind of thing. I did get some of those, even from my boss. Text me like a thing about the South Korean game that he was watching. That was great, but no work, right? And the reason I was able to do this is because my faculty, the staff, the people that I work with are similar to you guys. They're so loving and generous, and they could see what I needed when I didn't see it, right? And they told me, you need to take a break. You need to turn off, right? And I will do this again someday. Every year. I promised every year that I would actually go away. But that's why I come to church, because that was the feeling I always get. That's the feeling I did get this morning, and I got in our connections, that our community is so loving and kind and generous that every time I come here, I get something I didn't know I needed. I get that smile. I get that fist bump. I get that word. That wait till you hear. If you weren't here this morning, what they both talked about, what Reverend AJ and Reverend Sherry talked about, I felt it here, and I didn't know I was going to do that. I didn't know I was going to feel that. Thank you guys for being such a generous, kind, loving community, and that's why we come to church. And I invite you to all stand up, meet other people, say hi, smile at each other. You never know what you're each going to give to each other. So welcome.
I'm Reverend AJ. I use he and him pronouns, and our reading this morning is The Sweetness of Charity by Maya Angelou. The New Testament informs the reader that it is more blessed to give than to receive. I have found that among its other benefits, giving liberates the soul of the giver. The size and substance of the gift should be important to the recipient, but not to the donor, save that the best thing one can give is that which is appreciated. The giver is enriched, as is the recipient, and more important, that intangible but very real psychic force for good in the world is increased. When we cast our bread upon the waters, we can presume that someone downstream, whose face we will never know, will benefit from our action, as we who are downstream from another will profit from that grantor's gift. Since time is the one immaterial object which we cannot influence, neither speed up nor slow down, add to nor diminish, it is an imponderably valuable gift. Each of us has a few minutes a day or a few hours a week which we could donate to an old folks' home or a children's hospital ward. The elderly whose pillows we plump or whose water pitchers we refill may or may not thank us for our gift, but the gift is upholding the foundations of the universe. The children to whom we read simple stories may or may not show gratitude, but each boon we give strengthens the pillars of the world.
Each boon we give strengthens the pillars of the world. For every time we have given a gift that upholds the foundation of the universe, someone else has upheld our foundation. The children to whom we read simple stories may or may not show gratitude, but this is true also of adults. for every time we've had someone or something to thank. Well, it's impossible to collect all of those moments. But here at church, we're invited to honor the complexities of life, to take a moment to bring to mind whatever is alive within us, perhaps grief, maybe growth, or gratitude. Some moment over the past week or the week ahead that is worth paying attention to, worth honoring, silently here in the sanctuary or in the chat online, but certainly in our hearts and in our minds. I invite you to bring to mind and to hold in your heart one thing about your life worth paying attention to here in community. Into this circle of love and trust, I invite you to bring forward this one thing into the altar of community. Online, I invite you to share in the chat whatever it is you're holding in your heart. And here in the sanctuary, you're invited to come forward to light a candle or to raise your hand, and an usher can bring a candle to you. May we now share in this ritual of community care. May we witness to one another's life and hearts. All that we hold in our hearts for ourselves and for each other, all that we hold for the world, is held in this community and is held by a love that will not let us go. We began our time together this morning singing, asking to be filled up, a version of the Buddhist metta prayer, asking to be filled with loving kindness. And here in our community, we ask to be filled, but also to be emptied, to set down burdens that we carry. And in our pluralistic tradition, within Unitarian Universalism, we draw not only from the wisdom of Buddhism, but we join with our Jewish siblings now in the midst of the Jewish high holidays. And we sing a litany of atonement. In this practice of Yom Kippur, each of us are invited to set down the burdens that we accumulate over the course of living, all the times when we failed to live out of our deepest values, the times where we weren't aligned with our largest and most generous selves. I will speak, and you will respond in song led by Pablo with the words, "We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love." For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible.
Ourselves and each other, we begin again in love.
For each time that we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other, we begin again.
For each time that our greed turned us from the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone.
We forgive ourselves and each other.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing connection to our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other.
For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Amen.
I am honored this morning to read this written testimonial about First Unitarian from one of our members, Nanette Hiller. She writes, "Since joining First Unitarian, there have been so many little miracles, some more uncanny, that I've been moved by along our way growing into and with this community. Sometimes it's a simple moment of awe at the beauty of the woodwork and the trees and the grounds. The place itself is so numinous and grand, yet a comfy home, especially to the kids so comfortably foraging through the fridge for icy pops after service in summer. To see my child so happy and belonging, to meet and have the mentorship for Nadia of Laura Humphrey, who reminds me so much of my own mom, who was also a nurse, originally from the South, to hear some of the colloquialisms that I grew up with falling out of her, also like my mom's, enthusiastically conversational mouth. And then when the coming of age trip would visit Walden on their trip to Boston, these are some of the more uncanny things that are such miracles to me, such medicine, such a balm to the heavy grief I first walked back in those doors with. A trip to Walden Pond with a liberal church couldn't be more hand-picked by my mom than if that hand was still warm and alive today. Nanette writes, I was the last one to hold that loving hand. I told her it was okay to die, to go home, and that we would be okay. The last words she spoke to me in turn were, go home. Her smile was ecstatic, though she could barely speak anymore. So these miracles, this place, these moments, and most importantly, the kindness of so many people assures me that I told my mother the truth. And in these moments of connection and wonder among the living community here, it's like I feel my mom whispering the same thing back to me, a piece in my bones saying, it really is okay. We're all okay. It is okay to carry grief alongside joy. Community helps make this possible. I can feel my mother's voice answering my soul through these miracles of place, community, and connection at this church in her sweet southern lilt that still lives in my memory. It's okay to live, precious darling. Welcome home.
As part of the spiritual practice of generosity, we split our plate each week to support the work and justice and caring in our community. This week, half of our collection will support Family Promise of Greater Rochester, formerly RAIN, to assist families at risk of or experiencing homelessness to achieve sustainable independence by providing person-centered, holistic services in collaboration with the greater community. You are encouraged to give online at our website under Donate. Links are provided in the chat, and in person, you may put money in one of the offering boxes. In the spirit of abundance and generosity, the offering will now be given and humbly received.
And when I rise, let me rise like a bird joyfully. And when I fall, let me fall like a leaf gracefully, without regret. Let's learn this together. There aren't any lyrics, but I'm going to sing them to you. And when I rise, and when I rise, let me rise, let me rise like a bird, joyfully. And when I fall, let me fall like a leaf, gracefully, without regret. Now, as best as you can, whenever you remember, let's try this whole thing together. And when I rise, let me rise like a bird joyfully. And when I fall, and when I fall, let me fall like a leaf, gracefully, without regret, without
On Friday, we had a potluck and community brainstorm to generate ideas for stories and songs, questions and activities that might help us explore our whole year of upcoming seasonal themes for the rest of the church year. I did the thing. Did you catch it? I used the word we, but I wasn't as intentional about it as I could have been. In our current spiritual deepening packet for this season of belonging together, there's an exercise that invites the reader to be very mindful about whenever the word we is used and examine who is meant and who is left out. So let me be clear, when I say we had an event on Friday, I mean all three local Unitarian Universalist churches in Rochester. The First Unitarian Church of Rochester, the First Universalist Church of Rochester, and the UU Church of Canandaigua. Our growing collaboration on these themes has been a wonderful recent developed, a cherished part of my ministry to work with the excellent colleagues at both congregations, as well as the dedicated members who help craft the packets for spiritual deepening, lead small groups, and serve as worship associates. But can anyone here tell me, beyond this recent collaboration, how are our three churches related to one another? It's a real question. We're all Unitarian Universalist congregations, right? Those are in the names. All right, many of the ministers have been connected in their formation through one or other of the churches, yes. What about organizationally? How closely connected or tied to the other churches are we, beyond what we might do together? So we have separate small group ministry programs. Is there one more hand in the back? Some of them do things that are similar to the Soul Matters program we have here, but others do something different. The thing is that all these Unitarian Universalist churches are independent and autonomous at one level. We are totally separate entities, separate legal entities, totally separate leadership and governance, totally separate budgets, for instance. But we are also, of course, all Unitarian Universalist congregations. We are interdependent and covenanting together, claiming that name. Each church is a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, which is our larger national body. And now, despite the humorous nickname of sometimes calling the national headquarters the actual office building of the Unitarian Universalist Association, sometimes that's humorously referred to as the mothership, individual congregations aren't actually set forth out from that office. Individual congregations don't have their budgets propped up by the UUA's budget, for instance. In fact, it's the complete other way around. The only reason that the UUA, the association, exists is because congregations come together, affirm their membership, claim their belonging together in this great big tent known as Unitarian Universalism, and then generously fund that national organization to make it real and to live out its purpose. But of course, the funding is not a strict requirement. Congregational membership in the broader association is not contingent on giving money. But every congregation is asked to give a certain percentage of their budget to fund the association, and our congregation is very proud to be an honor congregation, meeting that ask year after year. And it's not a one-way street, of course. One of the main purposes of the UUA is to support congregations. And our church receives a lot of support and services from the denomination, as every UU congregation does, from guidance and consultation on a variety of issues, or when there are crises and difficulties, to trainings and leadership development for volunteers in worship, in pastoral care, social justice, and so many other areas. Now, again, to be clear, congregations don't receive less attention from the association when they give less money, but on the flip side, I think there is a sense in which they can get more when they give more, which is only in the sense that we, meaning all Unitarian Universalists, get more when more is given to our collective efforts. The more resources that the UUA has overall, the more that every congregation has, the more that every UU can benefit from the work that the UUA does, and the more that broader society benefits from the advocacy and justice work that the UUA engages in nationally. So it's not a transactional relationship. Some congregations receive all this great support and service from the denomination, but aren't able to give anything financially. But there is this direct correlation between the generosity of Unitarian Universalist congregations and the power and strength of Unitarian Universalism as a force for good in the world. Congregations give generously to fund the UUA because we know we are better when we work together and pool our resources together. And this basic truth, it's also true at the level of the local church as well. All that we are able to do and accomplish as a church is through our collective generosity. And so, partly I'm preaching this morning about generosity because we, First Unitarian, are about to conduct the fall wave of our annual stewardship campaign. Because while there's no bad time to reflect on this, no bad time to consider increasing your giving to the church, this fall, it also helps to be intentional sometimes. So this fall, we'll be reaching out to about half of you to have this conversation. But I'm also preaching this morning about generosity because it's just an ever-present spiritual question in our, by which I mean human beings, lives. How will I give of my time, talent, and treasure? To others? To my community? To myself, even? This is a question that confronts us every single day. No matter what the resources are that we have at our disposal, we can allocate them, we can spend them, we can use them thoughtlessly, unintentionally, automatically. Or we can be intentional, aligning how our resources are used with our deepest values, pursuing our boldest visions for a world transformed by our love. At our homecoming service 2 weeks ago, those present were invited to reflect on the gifts that they bring to community, including mentorship, service, conscience, inspiration, and even mere presence, if presence could ever be mere. Each of these gifts can be given as one going through the motions, or can be given in the spirit of intentionality and generosity. Even if the only resource you have is your presence, your body and where it is, your mind and where it goes, your soul and what it connects to, the question is unavoidable. How generous will you be with your precious gifts and resources? So what does Unitarian Universalism have to say about this ever-present spiritual question? How can our shared religious tradition help inform us and teach us? Well, as I am often wont to do, love going to the UU principles. So, can anyone here tell me, question time again, can anyone tell me which of the 8 UU principles talks about generosity? It is a trick question. The word generosity does not appear in the current articulation of the 8 principles, but I will say, as someone pointed out in the first service, their answer was all of them. And of course, generosity can be read into and is present in all of our grounding principles. But this lack of this word being there, it's this attention to the value of generosity, this is an important part of the current efforts to update those principles, to update the principles and purposes of the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, because that document is where the principles can be found. It's where the bylaws articulate why we have an association and what are the values that ground not only our work, but our relationships with each other as Unitarian Universalists, as congregations, covenanting together. So here's what the new proposal says about generosity, including that as one of the core UU values. We, and by we they mean the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, we cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. So let me break that down a little bit. Generosity is a response of gratitude, in recognition that nobody makes it through this life alone. All that any of our life is, all that any church community can sustain, is only possible because of the generosity of those who came before, or those who are currently upholding whatever part of the universe it is that you are not presently engaged in, but are inextricably bound to still. This is what Maya Angelou was talking about, right? Generosity is also a response grounded in hope. Hope not as optimism, thinking, well, everything will just be great if I give enough, but hope as faith in the unfolding, unknown future. The humility to know that our greatest fears are no more certain to come about than our greatest aspirations, knowing that whatever the future holds will more likely surprise us than be familiar or predictable, and we know that it will be better if it has benefited from our generosity. Generously sharing faith, this is one of my favorite things about being a Unitarian Universalist, because this is about knowing our own spiritual path, knowing what is of deepest value and spiritual significance to each of us, and then rather than hoarding that as a secret or something to be ashamed of, sharing these beautiful truths in a pluralist community, sharing the practices, stories, and theologies that help us make meaning of life, especially those that hold us in the hardest of times. Sharing these precious resources with one another in community is such a powerful gift. Generously sharing presence. I've already touched on this a little this morning, but I'll just add that even without words, simply being present to somebody else is an amazing gift. And even without physical presence, even if it's virtual or long distance, showing up for regular phone calls, co-working on Zoom, or gaming online together, finding ways to be with people. And again, to make that intentional time, to make space for folks to share what's going on in their lives, and to give them the gift of being witnessed to. It's powerful. Generously sharing resources, of course, refers to the time, talent, and treasure that it takes from everyone in a given community to create a flourishing, shared life together. Under our current economic system, we each encounter differing amounts of money to utilize, and as diverse human beings, we each have and develop different skills and talents. And time, while it may be utterly out of our influence as an immaterial object, none of us knows fully how much time we have in this life. So individually, our resources come in various amounts and shapes and sizes, but when people come together and pool resources, we may find that we can live from a more equitable abundance. Interdependence. This isn't just about the grand intellectual idea of the web of creation, and it isn't also just about the warm, fuzzy feeling of belonging to the universe and having a connection to everything and everyone, although these are both important aspects of interdependence. But let us never neglect the very concrete aspects of interdependence and mutuality. That sometimes it is another who feeds us. It is another whose presence helps calm our own nervous system. Another who literally lifts us up when we need help moving our bodies. Grounded in gratitude for what we have received and know we will receive from community, giving generously allows us to connect quite literally to the practical fact of interdependence and mutuality. And generosity, like all of the values articulated in this new proposal for the UUA's articulation of values, it's meant to be a clarification and an expression of the central value of love. That generosity is a form of showing love, of compassion and care, and that any of the values and any love that does not have a healthy heaping of generosity along with it is less than the fullness of what we mean by love. And just like our denominational structure, this articulation of generosity that I've just explored is not something being handed to you as a Unitarian Universalist in the metaphorical pew from me, the minister, having received it from the mothership. No, it's the result of a very thorough grassroots process, and ultimately is its own generous offering, not a requirement. The requirement in Unitarian Universalism is coming up with your own answer. So now I turn the question to you. What does generosity mean to you as a spiritual value? What does it look like or feel like when you are generous? And how can each of us move from the more general theological perspectives about generosity and move into the real concrete world of specifics? How do we give generously of our resources, and what resources are we talking about? So I have two practices that I recommend to you. One would be to make a values-based budget for a given resource, whether it's money or time or emotional energy or a particular skill that you have. And I'd encourage you to use percentages. Just think of or write down how much of that resource you would like to spend in various areas of your life. Then once you have that, compare that to a budget made up of actuals. Either come up with a typical week or month, or look at the most recent and see how your actual spending of this resource compares to the values-based budget. Please know that there is no shame in finding that your actual budget doesn't match your values budget. It's quite literally an ideal and aspirational piece, and quite frankly, I'd be surprised if it matched 100%. You would be in good company if it didn't. Things always look different when the rubber meets the road. But still, I acknowledge that it may be uncomfortable to do this process and face the discrepancy, but the perspective gained from it can be transformative and invite you into greater intentionality. Or the other practice, if you are more verbally oriented than mathematically inclined, you could write yourself a letter from the perspective of you 5 years in the future. Tell yourself what your life is like and what your generosity looks like, how it aligns with your intentions and your values. And how did you get from 2023 to this version of you in 2028? Or maybe you yourself have an even better idea for how to do this reflection. Whatever the method that you use, the invitation that I want to leave you with today is this question: what does your generosity look like? And how is it in conversation with the rest of your spiritual values? For me, I know at least this to be true. It is generous to be grateful for all the beauty and goodness of life. It is generous to wish for all to be filled with loving kindness. It is generous to give each tiny gift upholding the foundations of the universe. It is generous to forgive ourselves and each other and to begin again in love. It is generous to carry grief alongside joy. It is generous to be in community together. And it is generous to sing. So please join me now in singing our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment.
When the
standing and join me in the unison words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. May you go forth from here grounded in gratitude, growing in generosity, giving from the love within you to transform the world. May it be so. Go in peace.